Growing up in Westchester, a well-manicured suburb just outside New York City, came with a silent contract excellence. Wasn't just expected, it was required. Our colonial-style home on Maplewood Drive looked like it had been pulled from a Pottery Barn catalogue with its ivy-covered brick walls and trimmed boxwood hedges. But inside, the air was often taut, wound tight with comparison. My name is Elena Carter, and by the time I was 8, I understood the pecking order of praise at the dinner table. My father, Dr. Henry Carter, was the kind of cardiothoracic surgeon that hospitals flew across the country for. My mother, Cynthia, had made partner at her Manhattan law firm before 35 and was known for shutting down opposing counsel with surgical precision. And then there was my older sister Rachel, 3 years ahead of me in school and always 5 steps ahead in life. Captain of the debate team, first chair violinist, voted most likely to become president in 8th grade. She wore success like a tailored blazer. It fit her perfectly, and everyone applauded her for it. Dinners were structured like interviews. Every evening began with my mum placing her linen napkin on her lap and saying, "Let's go around. What did everyone accomplish today?" Rachel's updates always landed like applause lines, won the regional Model UN, or my chemistry teacher asked me to mentor the juniors. My dad would beam, nodding like a proud investor watching a stock rise. Then came my turn. Finished a game mod today, I'd say, once proud of spending the weekend teaching myself basic CSAT so I could build a new level inside Unity. And I figured out how to fix a rendering bug. A beat of silence. "That's nice," Mum would say, spooning salad onto her plate. "But don't forget your geometry tutor comes Friday. We really need to get those grades up." Dad would chime in with "Video games are fun, but let's keep our eyes on the big picture. Princeton doesn't care about Minecraft." What they heard was distraction. What I felt was rejection. To them, coding was a phase, a hobby, the digital equivalent of scribbling on a napkin. But to me, it was the only place I felt free. While Rachel displayed medals in her room like war trophies, my bedroom became a tech lab. One wall was covered in sticky notes with system errors and ideas for a social platform I dreamt of building. I had a hand-me-down PC that ran loud, but it let me escape. I started staying up late, sneaking in YouTube tutorials on JavaScript and databases when everyone else was asleep. I taught myself how to build small apps, one to track my homework, another that compiled restaurant data near our school. None of it made the fridge door, but I felt powerful, like I was creating something out of nothing. When I was 14, I used a basic scheduling algorithm to streamline my high school's volunteer program sign-ups, which had been a mess for years. It cut confusion and increased participation by 40%. The guidance counselor called me a genius. My parents said, "That's cute, but let's not get distracted. You still need to start prepping for SATs." Every time I reached for acknowledgement, I was redirected towards something more serious. Law school brochures started appearing in my backpack. My mum sent me a list of summer internships at legal aid clinics, just in case. When I mentioned applying to Carnegie Mellon for computer science, my dad didn't even look up from his newspaper. "Sweetheart, you have the brain for policy, not for screen time." And maybe worst of all, my sister. Rachel never outright mocked me, but the way she smiled, that tight-lipped way someone indulges a child describing a dream about becoming a dragon trainer, made it clear I was the outlier. At 15, I won a regional coding competition with a medical inventory app I'd built in Python. I remember stepping off the stage trophy and hand-face glowing. I texted my family a photo, no response. That night, Rachel got accepted to Harvard early decision. The family popped champagne. The next morning, my trophy was moved off the kitchen counter to make room for flowers. The silence wasn't just hurtful, it was defining. It told me who I wasn't allowed to become. So I made a decision. If they couldn't see the value in what I was building, I would build it anyway, without applause, without permission. And one day, it would be too big to ignore. By senior year, the silence between me and my parents had grown into a canyon, not the kind born of anger or open conflict, but the quieter kind, the kind filled with small, consistent dismissals that eroded trust 1 inch at a time. Every college conversation was a negotiation. My mum had a spreadsheet of Ivy League schools with law tracks complete with deadlines and application fee schedules. My dad circled rankings in US news magazines and left them on my desk like warning signs. Princeton, Yale, Georgetown. I'd already applied, just not where they thought. Georgia Tech, University of Washington, Carnegie Mellon, and finally Cooper Valley University, a small but fiercely innovative tech school in Northern California, known for churning out Silicon Valley disruptors. When the Cooper Valley acceptance email came, I read it in the school library. The merit scholarship offer at the bottom of the letter made me cry right there in the quiet study zone, muffling sobs into my hoodie sleeve. That night at dinner, I laid the letter on the table, hands shaking slightly. I got in, I said, voice almost breaking, with a full ride. My mum looked at the letter like it was written in another language. "Where even is this school, California?" I said. "It's one of the top tech programs, California," my dad cut in. "You're walking away from Ivy League possibilities for a school no one's heard of." "For computers, it's not just computers," I replied. "It's innovation, it's problem solving, it's what I love." My mum folded her napkin slowly. "Eleanor, you have so much potential, you're throwing it away." That line, "you're throwing it away," like potential was only valid if it came with courtroom credentials or a stethoscope. Rachel, home for spring break from Harvard, tried to help, in her usual way, condescending, but with a smile. "Let her try, Mum. She'll probably switch back to poli-sci after the first year." I didn't argue. I just nodded and said, "Maybe." But inside I felt something snap, not in anger, but in resolve. I packed that fall without ceremony. My dad offered to ship some of my boxes. My mum reminded me to stay safe and make smart choices. No one came with me, no big send-off. Rachel had gotten a banner and brunch. I got a checklist and a kiss on the forehead. Still, when I stepped into my cramped dorm room in the tech building basement, something inside me felt light for the first time in years. I wasn't the other Carter daughter anymore. I was just Eleanor, just a freshman with a beat-up laptop and a fire in her chest. The classes were intense, competitive, sometimes brutal. But for the first time, I was in rooms where I didn't have to explain why I cared about clean UI design or API security. People got it. These weren't kids playing with code for extra credit. These were builders, dreamers, weirdos who thought in loops and functions. By mid-semester, I met Jordan Reyes in an advanced logic design class. They were sharp-tongued and brilliant, with an affinity for debugging under pressure. We clicked immediately. After a group project where we built a prototype scheduling tool for hospitals, we started hanging out, grabbing coffee, comparing code throwing around what-if ideas at 1 a.m. It was during one of those late-night brainstorming sessions surrounded by empty Red Bull cans and IDE windows that Jordan tossed out, "What if we could make patient data not suck?" I blinked, like in hospitals. Yeah, my aunt died from a meds mix-up because 2 departments weren't communicating. Same chart, different versions, both outdated. Something inside me shifted. That rage that never found words at the dinner table. It had a direction now. We started sketching. Post-it notes filled Jordan's bedroom walls, user flow pain points, MVP ideas. Between classes and ramen runs, we wireframed a healthcare communication platform built around real-time syncing, simplified interfaces, and a design philosophy that centered users, not institutions. We called it Cure Loop. No one knew what we were doing. My professors encouraged our enthusiasm. My parents didn't ask. When I came home for Thanksgiving, the first question my uncle asked was whether I was still into that computer stuff. My dad offered to introduce me to a friend at a legal tech firm in case I wanted to make a pivot. I just smiled and said I was figuring things out. What I didn't say was that Jordan and I were working out of their cousin's garage with a space heater and 2 folding chairs, that we'd entered 3 student startup competitions, that we'd just landed a meeting with a local clinic willing to pilot our beta version. I didn't say anything because I knew it wouldn't matter to them yet. Success in their world had a dress code and a resume format. What we were doing didn't look like success to them, it looked like risk, rebellion, refusal. But to me, it looked like freedom. By Christmas, CureLoop had 5 pilot users. By spring, we'd won $10,000 in a startup grant. We incorporated, filed for IP protection. We slept 4 hours a night and still turned in assignments on time. I had no approval, no applause, no mentorship from home. But for the first time in my life, I didn't feel small. The hardest part wasn't the hustle. It wasn't the cold garage in winter or debugging code until my eyes blurred at 3 a.m. It wasn't even the ramen or the rejections or the weeks we couldn't pay ourselves. It was the silence from home, that slow, hollow echo after every quarterly update I never sent. The way my dad still referred to me as between things, or how my mum would ask every single call, "Have you thought about grad school yet?" Like all this building, all this passion was just a preamble to something respectable. I didn't correct them anymore. I didn't have the energy to explain seed funding or beta testers or version control. I just said I'm doing okay and let them think I was quietly failing. In truth, Jordan and I were quietly building something no one could ignore. CureLoop began to spread, first to a second clinic, then a third. Each time the feedback was the same. Why doesn't every hospital have this? Our first breakthrough came when Dr. Paula Han, an administrator at a regional hospital network, tried our system during a pilot and called it transformative. She was blunt, overworked, and exactly the kind of person who didn't say nice things unless they were deserved. She invited us to speak at the State Medical Innovation Forum. We were 2 kids in thrifted blazers, standing in front of a room full of healthcare executives, twice our age, demoing a tool we'd written on borrowed Wi-Fi. They clapped. And not the polite good effort kind. The real kind. The you just changed the conversation kind. One investor handed me his card before I even left the stage. A month later, we had our first term sheet, a $500 to $1,000 seed round that would allow us to hire real staff, move into a co-working space, and build the infrastructure we only dreamed of a year ago. I still didn't tell my family. We incorporated under a new name, Helix Bridge. The brand felt bolder, like something that belonged on the cover of Wired. We hired 2 engineers, both of whom were older than me. I led sprint meetings with imposter syndrome buzzing in my stomach, but I kept showing up one uncomfortable leadership moment at a time. At home, things hadn't changed. Rachel had just been promoted to policy advisor in DC, and Mum mentioned it like it was royalty. "She's doing such important work. You two should talk, maybe she can help you find a path forward." As if I was wandering. At one point, my dad emailed me an internship posting for a local law firm's IT support position. I didn't reply. Instead, I printed the email and pinned it above my desk as motivation. Every time I doubted myself, I looked up and remembered that approval wasn't the goal, impact was. And impact, we were learning, had a footprint. Our system reduced communication errors in one clinic by 37% in 3 months. Medication mishaps dropped, patient wait times fell. Nurses thanked us in emails that made me cry. They weren't just users, they were witnesses to change. "You made my job bearable again." This platform saved my mother's life. The press started calling, first local outlets, then TechCurrent ran a profile. Jordan was front and center, funny, loud, confident. I kept my photo out of it. Just a silhouette. Just Elena C. co-founder. People began calling me the Ghost Builder. The nickname stuck. There was power in that silence, in letting the product speak while I worked in the shadows. I wasn't hiding. I was growing roots so deep no one could uproot me again. Still, the dual life was exhausting. At home, I played the part of the daughter politely muddling through adulthood. At work, I ran a startup on track to revolutionize a multi-billion-dollar industry. I learned to split myself in half until one day I couldn't anymore. It was the Christmas before our Series A. My dad cornered me after dinner, brandy in hand, casual but pointed. So, Eleanor, you ever think about going back to school? It's never too late for law. I looked at him then, at the twinkling lights on the tree, then at the framed photo of Rachel on the mantel in her White House badge. And I smiled, not bitter, just bone-deep tired. Dad, I said gently, I'm not lost. I'm just not where you expected to find me. He blinked like I'd spoken in another language. Maybe I had, but I wasn't going to translate anymore. I had code to write, a team to lead, lives to change. And somewhere deep inside, a younger version of me sitting alone at a family dinner table finally stood up quietly but fully seen. The day the two halves of my life crashed into each other started with an email. Subject: strategic acquisition discussion from Sophia Ramirez, Director of M&A, Veritas Health Systems. Veritas was a giant, one of the largest private health networks in the country, with 30 hospitals across 6 states. If they wanted to talk, it wasn't about curiosity, it was about buying. I stared at the email for a long moment, then forwarded it to Jordan with one line, "This might be the call." By then, Helix Bridge was no longer just a startup, it was a movement. We had 60 employees, full enterprise clients, and were onboarding a new hospital every other week. Word was spreading fast in the health tech world. There's this tiny team doing what billion-dollar companies can't. What Veritas didn't know yet was that the ghost behind Helix Bridge also happened to be Jason Carter's younger sister. Jason, my golden child older sibling, was now a rising star neurologist. He had just announced his engagement to Sophia Ramirez. Yes, that Sophia. I discovered it by accident. A family group chat I usually ignored suddenly lit up with, "Sophia said yes." A quick search, a LinkedIn profile. The blood left my face. Sophia Ramirez, Director of Strategic Acquisitions, Veritas Health Systems. The same Sophia who'd scheduled a pitch meeting with me in 2 weeks. The same Sophia who at the moment believed Elena Carter was some ghostly genius hidden behind a product. And now the woman marrying my brother. What were the odds Jordan naturally thought it was hilarious? So, the fiancé of your brother is about to acquire your company while still thinking you're the mysterious founder with no photo. This is the plot twist of the year. It wasn't funny to me. Not yet. Because I knew how my family saw me. I was the still figuring it out one. The one whose job description never made it into dinner conversations. Jason was the surgeon. I was somewhere in tech. And now Sophia, one of the most respected dealmakers in digital health, was going to sit across from me at a private engagement dinner at a rooftop restaurant in Midtown, with both of our families, in designer clothes, over wine and filet mignon. The universe has a sense of humor. I debated skipping it entirely. Jordan tried to talk me out of it. You can't keep both lives forever. Maybe this is the moment they collide. I wasn't ready, but I wasn't hiding anymore either, so I went. The restaurant was bathed in warm, light jazz music, curling around polished marble and glass walls. My parents were already seated when I arrived. My mother fussed with place cards. My father chatted with someone I assumed was Sophia's dad, who unsurprisingly was a healthcare executive himself. Jason spotted me first. "Lena, you made it." He said it like I'd emerged from hibernation. I smiled and hugged him. Wouldn't miss it. Sophia turned. She was elegant, poised, exactly the kind of woman my family imagined for Jason. She extended a hand. "I've heard so much about you, so have I," said, smiling. The dinner was perfectly choreographed until it wasn't. Somewhere between the salad course and the entree conversation shifted to careers. Sophia's father asked Jason how things were going in his department. My dad chimed in about brain surgeries and published papers. Then came the question I'd been waiting for. So Eleanor Sophia asked casually, "What do you do in tech again?" Before I could answer, my mum jumped in. "Oh, Eleanor's been working with some kind of software. We've been telling her she should explore more stable positions. Jason has a friend at Apple." Sophia tilted her head. "Wait, Elena Carter?" I met her eyes. She blinked, processing, her fork lowered slowly. "You're Elena Carter, as in Helix Bridge." Jason laughed, half choking. "No, no, my sister works in back-end support. She's not." Wait, what? Sophia turned to him, stunned. "Jason, your sister is the founder of the platform we've been vetting for acquisition." You could feel the air collapse out of the room. Silence, thick and unmoving. My father's hand froze mid-toast. My mother dropped her napkin. Jason stared at me like I'd grown wings. "Is that true?" he whispered. I nodded. Calmly, "Yes." Sophia leaned back, eyes wide. "We've been trying to reverse engineer your syncing protocol for months. Your system is the most elegant health data interface we've ever tested." My uncle dropped his wineglass. Jason stammered, "But why didn't you say anything?" I glanced around the room. "Would you have believed me if I did?" That landed harder than I expected. Sophia, ever the professional, regained composure first. "I owe you an apology. You were intentionally left out of every photo. The ghost founder, I had no idea. It was intentional," I said. "I needed time to build before being seen." And just like that, the myth became a person. The rest of dinner was a blur, follow-up questions, awkward compliments, sudden rewrites of past narratives. My mother said something about always knowing I had potential. My dad claimed to have mentioned me to colleagues. Jason just sat there stunned, but I sat tall, not angry, not smug, just seen, finally seen. I knew the call would come. It arrived the next morning. Caller ID Mum. I let it ring twice before answering. "Eleanor," she said, skipping greetings, "we need to talk. Brunch, tomorrow, the Fairmont, 11. Her tone wasn't angry. It was something more dangerous, carefully composed. The voice she used with juries she didn't want to startle. I agreed, hung up, and immediately called Jordan. "They're coming for answers," I said. Jordan laughed. "You mean now that you're the millionaire daughter they want to understand your little project?" But it didn't feel funny. It felt heavy, like all the versions of me they had imagined were about to be dragged into a room and measured against the truth. The Fairmont brunch room was pristine, all velvet chairs and hushed servers. My parents were already seated, dressed like they were meeting a senator. Dad stood to greet me. "You look well," he said, offering a stiff smile. Mum leaned in for a kiss on the cheek, awkward and too quick. I sat. They stared. So my mother began folding her hands. "Helix Bridge, a $200 million company. You've been busy." "I have." My dad sipped his black coffee, setting the cup down with care. "Why didn't you tell us?" I didn't answer right away. I watched the sunlight catch on the edge of my glass. Then I looked them both in the eye. "Because you never listened." Mum flinched just slightly. "You never asked how I was building. You asked when I'd give it up. You never said you were proud I stopped waiting for it." "That's not fair," she said too quickly. "We were concerned." "You were dismissive," I interrupted. My voice stayed calm, steady. "You thought success only came in the form you understood. Law degrees, titles, things you could explain to your friends at dinner parties." My father cleared his throat. "We only wanted what was best for you." "No," I said quieter. "You wanted what was most comfortable for you." They didn't speak. The silence was louder than any argument we'd ever had. Every time I tried to tell you what I was working on, I continued, you redirected the conversation. Every win I brought home was minimized. So eventually I stopped sharing. I stopped hoping. Dad finally spoke. Maybe we didn't understand, but you could have explained it to you," I offered. "I did. You didn't hear me. You were too busy comparing me to Jason, measuring me by your yardstick." My mother's expression cracked. She looked down, suddenly unsure of her next line in the script she'd rehearsed for years. Then, for the first time in a long time, she said something unpolished. "I think we underestimated you," she whispered. The honesty in her voice caught me off guard. My father leaned back, arms crossed, not defensive, just uncertain. You've done something remarkable, Eleanor, but we didn't know how to support it. You didn't try, I said. That's what hurt. He nodded slowly. The first true acknowledgement from him in over a decade. I'm not here for an apology, I added. I just need you to understand that your silence shaped me, but so did mine. They didn't respond right away, and for once that was okay. Some truths don't land clean, they take root later when no one's watching. Jason showed up unannounced 2 nights later. He brought wine and takeout like we were in college, like this was a normal Tuesday. I panicked at dinner, he admitted as we sat on my couch overlooking the skyline. Sophia filled in the gaps afterward. I feel like an idiot. You weren't, I said. Just blind. He looked down. I thought I was the successful sibling. I smiled. You were. You still are. It was never a competition. It was for Mum and Dad, he muttered. They always made it feel like that. We were quiet for a moment. Then he looked at me and said something I never thought I'd hear. I'm proud of you, Lena. I'm sorry it took me so long to say that out loud. That one hit harder than I expected. Because underneath all the resentment, what I had always wanted was not revenge or even recognition, just a family that saw me for who I actually was. Over the next few weeks, things didn't magically repair, but they shifted. My mum emailed me an article about women in tech asking if it was accurate. My dad asked to see a demo of the Helix Bridge dashboard. Jason forwarded a photo of his residents using our system. Your code, their care. Even Sophia, now my future sister-in-law and acquisition partner, became a bridge between our worlds. There were awkward moments, missteps, times when my parents still referred to Helix Bridge as your app like it was a side project. But there were also real efforts. And for the first time, I didn't feel like I had to fight to prove my place at the table. Because I had built my own. And now they were pulling up chairs not as judges, but as guests. 6 months after the dinner that detonated my family's assumptions, my world had shifted, but not in the way I once imagined. Yes, the Veritas acquisition closed. Yes, my bank account had more zeros than I ever thought possible. And yes, Helix Bridge was now live in over 400 hospitals across 3 continents. But the real change I had stopped needing to perform my success. I'd stopped explaining, proving, chasing. I was just me, CEO, sister, daughter, builder. And for the first time, that was enough. My office now overlooked the bay. The windows wrapped around 2 sides like a frame for everything I had built. On sunny days, light spilled across the whiteboards, and cork walls covered in pilot data design ideas and sticky notes that read like poetry. Make it easier. Serve the humans, not the system. Clarity. Complexity. Helix Bridge was no longer a project. It was an ecosystem. Jordan now led the product team. Our engineers included former nurses, EMTs, and caregivers. We didn't just want sleek code, we wanted human design. And with the acquisition funds secured, I could finally do what I'd dreamed of in silence for years, build pathways for others. Once a month, I hosted a small workshop for high school girls interested in tech. We didn't just talk code, we talked survival. How to navigate condescension in classrooms, how to handle parents who don't get it, how to stay curious even when the world tells you to be quiet. One day a girl named Aria stayed behind. She was 16, fierce-eyed and holding back tears. My dad thinks computers are for boys, she said quietly. He tells me it's not a real job. I nodded. I'd heard that music before. What do you think I asked? She didn't hesitate. I think I can build something that saves lives. Then build it, I said, handing her a small notebook. Write your plans in here. Don't wait for permission. She looked at me like I had just handed her the universe. Maybe in a way I had. At home, things remained imperfect but real. My mum no longer offered unsolicited advice about fallback plans. My dad had taken to quoting articles about health tech trends like he discovered the field himself. Jason and Sophia became a steady part of my life, not because they had to be, but because we chose to be. We hosted dinner once a month at my place. No dress codes, no resumes. Just wine, imperfect food, and better conversations. One night, Jason paused between bites of burnt lasagna. "You ever wish they'd just seen you sooner?" he asked genuinely. I thought about it. I thought about 15-year-old me clutching a regional coding trophy while the family celebrated Rachel's Ivy League acceptance. I thought about sophomore year Eleanor eating cafeteria noodles while her platform helped real patients. And then I said no. He raised a brow. Really? If they had seen me back then, I said slowly, I might have built something smaller, safer, something shaped by their approval. He nodded, then raised his glass. Two ghost founders. I clinked mine gently against his, to not needing applause to do the work. Success, I learned, isn't the volume of recognition. It's the integrity of the impact. I didn't build Helix Bridge to prove them wrong. I built it because I saw something broken and I had the skill and the stubbornness to fix it. And somewhere along the way, the silence I once resented became my sanctuary. The invisibility I once hated gave me freedom, and the disapproval I once feared became irrelevant. Because I no longer measured my worth by how many people clapped. I measured it by what I left behind. Now, when people ask me what I do, I don't say founder or CEO or tech leader. I say I build systems that help people, and I help others build their own. Then I pause, because most of them smile but don't really understand. That's okay, they don't need to. I do. Fade out. If you're reading this and your voice has been ignored, your passion dismissed, or your path misunderstood, keep walking. Your silence might be a chrysalis, not the end, but the beginning. Build, heal, outgrow, and when the time comes, step into the light. If you loved this story, don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel. Your support inspires us to bring you more heartwarming stories almost every day. Thank you for being part of our community. See you in the next one.